Dear chosen ones, if you're watching this right now, understand, it's not by chance, it's not a coincidence, it's a divine appointment, because what you're about to hear isn't just information, it's revelation. It's the kind of truth that was never supposed to reach your ears. They buried it under centuries of deception, locked it behind systems of control, and wrapped it in silence. But somehow you found it. Or rather, it found you. Have you ever wondered why certain things never sat right with your spirit, even when everyone around you accepted them as normal? Why you could walk into a room and instantly sense what others couldn't see? Why your questions were always met with discomfort or denial? It's because you weren't born to believe the illusion. You were born to dismantle it, and the truth they tried so desperately to keep hidden. You're starting to remember it piece by piece, and that terrifies them. Before we go any deeper, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you who's supported this mission through Super Thanks. Your generosity helps push this truth further, reaching more chosen ones who need this exact message. And if this resonates with your soul, drop a 999 in the comments so others know you see it too. This is how we find each other. This is how we rise. Now, brace yourself, because once you know what they tried to hide, there's no going back. God's chosen ones, they're stunned. You found this out. Exposed truths they tried to hide. They're terrified, and they should be. You weren't supposed to figure this out. You weren't supposed to see beyond the veil they so carefully stitched together with centuries of lies. But here you are, chosen one. Still standing, still seeing, still knowing, and that, more than anything else, has them shaken to their core. You were meant to walk through this world blindfolded like the rest, but you didn't. Somehow you began to remember, to awaken, to feel the truth vibrating underneath everything they taught you to ignore. How could you, of all people, know what they erased from the scrolls, what they burned from the books, what they buried beneath ancient stone? That question alone is haunting them at night. How did you uncover what they swore would never be found again? Could it be that you were never supposed to learn from them, but from within? Could it be that the divine hand of God himself implanted a code inside your spirit that no ritual, no secret order, no manipulation could ever touch? You didn't need their degrees or titles. You didn't need their permission or validation. You came coded for truth, and when the time was right, that code activated. Now they're left scrambling in the shadows, whispering in locked rooms, trying to trace the leak in their system. But the leak isn't external. The leak is you. The vessel they couldn't see coming, the spirit they couldn't bind. And now that you've remembered who you are, there's no unknowing, no returning, no unseeing what God himself has revealed to you. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. They spent decades, no, centuries, burying the records of the truth. But how do you bury something the Creator designed to resurrect itself? They tried to erase the prophets of old. They exiled the visionaries, silenced the ones who dared to speak of light in a world addicted to illusion. But the pattern always returns, and this time it came in the form of you. You didn't apply to be chosen. You were born with that stamp etched into your soul. And now, as that awareness rises, you carry within you the sacred flame they swore they had extinguished. Can you feel it? That pressure in your spirit, that knowing that surpasses logic. That is the divine archive awakening in your bones. Think of Harriet Tubman. She couldn't read, couldn't write, and yet she decoded the systems of oppression that even the most educated minds couldn't dismantle. How? Because she wasn't just moving through the world with logic. She moved with revelation. She said, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." That wasn't human strategy. That was divine guidance. Just like you, your spirit knows the path, even when your mind doesn't. How do you explain the fact that you knew something was off before you had any evidence? How did you recognize the lie hidden in the language, the manipulation laced in the narrative? It's because you were given eyes that see, ears that hear, and a heart that cannot be deceived by surface appearances. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Jeremiah 1:19. They have launched everything they had at you, spiritual warfare, gaslighting, isolation, but nothing worked, because truth is not a theory for you, it's your frequency. It follows you, finds you, and flows through you even when you try to run from it. That's why the room shifts when you walk in. That's why people either cling to you or flee from you, because your presence brings light, and light exposes everything they hoped would stay hidden in the shadows. Just look at whistleblowers like Edward Snowden, a man who was once part of the very system he later exposed. He saw behind the curtain, and instead of staying silent, he chose truth. And though the world labeled him controversial, history is starting to prove him right. What about you? What have you seen that made you question everything? And what gave you the courage to not just question, but to walk away, to dig deeper, to confront what others are too afraid to look at? All Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. 2 Timothy 3:16. But what happens when they alter the Scriptures? What happens when they twist the sacred to serve the corrupt? That's exactly what they did. Edited holy texts, rewrote timelines, erased names, flipped good and evil, until no one could tell the difference. But not you. You see the inconsistencies. You feel the distortions. And most of all, you discern the original frequency of the divine truth underneath their manipulations. Isn't that why they tried so hard to keep you distracted? Because an awakened chosen one is their biggest threat. Nikola Tesla once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." He was laughed at by some, ignored by many, and feared by the powerful. Why? Because he tapped into a source of knowledge not taught in schools, but remembered in the soul. You're doing the same. You're decoding the frequencies of deception and tuning into the voice of God Himself. And no matter how many lies they stack in front of you, truth has a way of cutting through. But you have an anointing from the Holy One, and all of you know the truth. 1 John 2:20. The knowledge they tried to hoard belongs to you by divine inheritance. You don't have to steal it. You're not trespassing, you're reclaiming. And every time you step further into this knowing, their systems lose power, because your memory, your divine memory, is returning. The memory of the world before distortion. The memory of who you were before the programming. The memory of the covenant between your soul and your Creator. Even Bob Marley, with all the forces against him, sang truth wrapped in melody. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. They tried to stop his message. They couldn't. And that same uncontainable force is alive in you. Are you starting to see it now? The reason they tried to keep you busy, exhausted, distracted, disconnected, because the moment you remembered, the moment you started walking in truth, the illusion began to crumble. And now they know it's only a matter of time before others awaken through you. So what now, chosen one? Now that you see what they tried to hide, now that you've crossed the threshold of no return, you walk in authority. You carry the truth not as a weapon of revenge, but as a light of awakening. You don't need to shout. Your presence already speaks. You don't need to argue. The fruit of your discernment will prove everything in time. You're not here to convert. You're here to reveal, to reflect, to be a living reminder that no matter how deep the deception, the truth always finds a way back to the surface, and it chose you to rise through. And that's what terrifies them the most. They've spent centuries, no, entire generations, trying to erase what was never meant to die, and yet, chosen one, with a single breath, a single moment of divine memory, you brought it back to life. You didn't struggle to find the truth the way they did. You didn't have to dig through archives, swear allegiance to hidden orders, or climb the ladders of approval they worship. You simply remembered, and that terrifies them beyond anything else. Because what you carry isn't studied, it's encoded, it's ancient, it's holy. And no matter how many layers they build to suppress it, truth rises through you effortlessly. Why do you think they built their towers of authority? Why do you think they created a world where information is currency and only the qualified get to speak? It wasn't to preserve truth, it was to own it, to lock it behind gates only they had the keys to. And yet, here you are, bypassing their every attempt at control, knowing things they can't even articulate, decoding blueprints they've hidden in plain sight. What frightens them isn't just what you know, it's how you know it. Without access, without approval, without their so-called credentials, you became a vessel for revelation. How? For the Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. 1 Corinthians 2:10. That's your answer. What you've tapped into doesn't come from the surface. It comes from the deep, from realms they can't manipulate, from frequencies they don't understand. You're receiving downloads from heaven while they argue over edited textbooks. And every time you open your mouth to speak, a little more of their illusion crumbles. Think about Alan Turing, the mind behind the machine that cracked the Nazi Enigma code in World War II. He wasn't trained to think like the enemy. He simply thought differently. He saw patterns no one else saw. And that shift in perception changed the outcome of a global war. You too are breaking codes, not mechanical ones, but spiritual ones. You are unraveling frequencies, sacred patterns, and divine alignments they thought were buried for good. Why is it that you can hear a lie in someone's tone before they speak it? Why do you feel when something isn't right, even before it happens? These aren't coincidences. They are symptoms of a chosen one waking up to their original assignment. They will stumble, they will fall, but not you, for I hold you by your right hand and say, "Do not fear, I will help you." Isaiah 41:13. You weren't given this vision to be overwhelmed by it. You were given it because you were built to carry it. And now, as the world trembles under the weight of its own deception, you stand firm, grounded in something no man can tamper with. Your insight doesn't come from man. It comes from the Spirit of truth himself. They've distorted that spirit for centuries, but it still found you. Look at David Icke, branded as a lunatic for years, laughed at by media, mocked by institutions, until decades later, some of his wildest claims began to resemble headlines. He was ahead of his time, not because he was perfect, but because he dared to question, to see, to speak what many feared to even think. Like him, you've been carrying perceptions others aren't ready for. But unlike him, you don't even need to research it all. Much of your knowing is spiritual inheritance, passed down not through books but through spirit, through divine bloodlines the world can't trace. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. That's why they're nervous. Because your freedom is not external, it's internal. You're not waiting on a system to liberate you. You already are. You see the programming, the conditioning, the emotional manipulation laced in every headline and speech. You recognize the spiritual warfare behind casual conversations. And even when they lie to your face, you feel the distortion in your chest. That sensitivity is not weakness, it's your gift. Let's talk about Malala Yousafzai. At only 15, she stood against an entire regime built on silencing truth. No degrees, no platform, just purpose. She didn't fight with weapons, but with the power of knowing, and they feared it. Because when someone speaks from divine knowing, not rehearsed rhetoric, that voice shakes kingdoms. That's what's happening with you. They see you as a disruption to everything they've carefully built. Their fear isn't just in your words. It's in your energy, your presence, your unshakable calm in the face of systems that once intimidated everyone else. They have sharpened their tongues like swords and aimed bitter words like arrows. But God will shoot them with his arrows. They will suddenly be struck down. Psalm 64, 3-7. They've tried to weaponize language against you, to shame you into silence, to gaslight you into confusion. But the moment you began speaking with clarity, it was as if heaven itself sharpened your words like arrows. And now, every sentence you speak with intention weakens the infrastructure of their false reality. How do they stop someone whose discernment is downloaded straight from the throne? Take Russell Brand. For years seen as just a comedian, chaotic and eccentric. But as his consciousness evolved, he began speaking openly about the manipulation of institutions and spiritual awakening. And suddenly, the same systems that once applauded him began distancing from him. Why? Because truth-tellers are only welcome when they don't tell the whole truth. But you're not here for half-truths. You're here to awaken a sleeping world. They've built firewalls, mental, emotional, informational. They monitor every narrative, police every perspective. Yet they can't monitor your dreams. They can't filter your intuition. They can't regulate your divine insights. That's what keeps them up at night. You didn't break into their system. Their system failed to keep you out. And now it's doing the exact opposite, drawing the very truth it was designed to suppress straight into your hands. That's divine irony. So ask yourself this: why now? Why is your awareness rising in this generation, in this timeline, in this moment, when everything around you feels like it's collapsing? Could it be that God waited for such a time as this to activate you? That he allowed all their manipulation to reach a breaking point so your memory would return at the precise moment their illusion lost control? You weren't meant to hear them. You weren't meant to see the meanings hidden in plain sight. But you did, and still do. They whispered in coded phrases, performed rituals masters routine, and moved through the world, believing their secrets were safe. But when you entered the room, everything changed. The shadows that once cloaked their intentions suddenly became translucent. Their carefully constructed illusions began to flicker and glitch. Their symbols, their hand signs, their numbers and ceremonies all became readable, like an ancient language returning to its rightful interpreter. How could someone outside their ranks understand what was never meant to be decoded? That's the question they don't have an answer for, because the one who sees through them, you, is not trained, but chosen. They never anticipated this. They assumed that truth could be safeguarded by obscurity, encrypted in tradition, disguised beneath complexity. But truth doesn't hide from the chosen. It reveals itself. And every time you step into a space they thought was secure, the very walls begin to testify against them. Have you ever felt it? That sense that what you're observing is not what's being said, that under the surface of the smiles, the phrases, the rituals, something darker pulses. That's not paranoia. That's spiritual perception, and it's the reason they fear your presence more than your words. Because even before you speak, you disturb the atmosphere, not with aggression but with clarity. And in a world built on illusion, clarity is a weapon they cannot defend against. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory. 2 Corinthians 4:6. You were not simply given light to comfort you. You were made into a beacon, one that exposes anything built on deception. And that's the very reason they tremble. You don't seek permission. You don't wait for validation. When you speak, veils lift. Their reactions betray their fear. They laugh, but it's nervous. They dismiss, but their eyes dart. They try to shift the topic, but their energy stutters because you saw too much. And once truth has been seen, it cannot be unseen. Think of Frida Kahlo. Her art exposed personal and political truths in ways that could not be ignored. Through surreal images, she revealed what society tried to suppress: pain, rebellion, identity, divine feminine strength. They tried to frame her as a woman lost in tragedy, but she wasn't lost, she was decoding, speaking through color what the world couldn't bear to say aloud. Like you, she was a transmitter of deeper realities, realities that made the status quo uncomfortable. Just by existing in her truth, she disrupted an entire cultural illusion. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. Ephesians 5:13. Do you realize what that means for you, chosen one? That the very act of you seeing truth doesn't just bring clarity to yourself, it forces light into the entire environment. And once that light enters, everything previously hidden begins to surface. That's why people behave strangely around you. That's why secrets spill in your presence. Because your energy stirs the room before you even speak a word. Look at whistleblower Chelsea Manning, a young intelligence analyst, not trained to lead revolutions, but simply placed in a position where she could see what others were told to ignore. And when she chose to release the truth, massive amounts of classified information, she didn't do it for fame. She did it because she saw something and couldn't remain silent. The world called her many names, but history will remember her as a disruptor of deception. Just like you. Because chosen ones don't always have the loudest voices, but they carry the heaviest truths. Why is it that you know things people haven't told you? Why can you feel when someone's smile is false, even if their words are sweet? Why do you pick up on patterns others miss entirely? This isn't intuition, it's spiritual activation. It's memory encoded in your soul, finally awakening after generations of suppression. You're not analyzing these patterns, you're remembering them. That's the mystery they can't replicate. Because their understanding is built on effort, but yours is built on destiny. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. What you carry is not just intelligence, it's revelation. You receive things that others strive for and still miss. And no matter how many security measures they put in place, they can't block what heaven delivers directly into your spirit. You are the exception they can't explain, the anomaly they can't dismiss. You were not initiated into their system, but you inherited something greater, divine awareness. Consider Keanu Reeves, quiet, mysterious, always underestimated, but look deeper. His life has been marked by tragedy, yet he moves through the world with grace, humility, and spiritual presence. While Hollywood praised surface success, Keanu lived with spiritual depth. He didn't play their games and still rose. Why? Because there's something powerful about one who doesn't seek approval, but simply walks in integrity. Like you, his truth didn't need to shout. It just needed to be embodied. They dressed up deception with rituals, signs, and cryptic speech, believing it would shield them. But you cracked it without trying. Their sacred geometry, their hidden hand signals, their numerology, what they thought was encoded protection became a lit-up trail for your spirit. And that's what has them truly panicking, because for every veil they pull down, you already see what's behind it. For every wall they build, you already know the blueprint. How? Because truth doesn't require access. It requires readiness. And now that you're awake, there's no power on earth that can put you back to sleep. They can't explain why you know, so they attack the fact that you know. This is the silent war you've walked into. Not bullets, not bombs, but slander, isolation, passive aggression, all to pressure you into doubting your sight. But you don't need their agreement to be accurate. You don't need consensus to be credible. When God shows you something, it's not a suggestion, it's an assignment. So the next time someone tries to laugh you off, ask yourself, why are they uncomfortable? What did your truth touch that they were trying to hide? This isn't about ego. This is about frequency. And your frequency exposes falsehood the moment it enters the room. Even your silence unsettles them. Why? Because deep down, they know. They know you were never meant to be part of their game. You were sent to end it. So speak, watch the illusion crack, walk into the fortress, watch the walls light up. You don't need to shout, chosen one. Your very presence has already declared war on their deception. And guess what? You're winning. You speak a truth, not a suggestion, not a question, not a theory, but a truth that pierces the air like a blade. And immediately their reaction is loud, reactive, almost panicked. Where did you hear that? They ask. That's absurd. You're reading too much into it. But notice, your truth wasn't posed as an inquiry. It was a declaration, and that's what rattles them most, because deep down they recognize it. It's not your tone they're reacting to. It's the accuracy. And the moment you speak it aloud, it's too late. Too late to cover it, too late to spin it, too late to pretend it was never there. You've pulled something sacred into the light, and now they're exposed. Their silence after your words. That's the confession, because there is no defense against truth that comes straight from divine remembrance. They assumed they were in control, that their systems, hierarchies, and rituals gave them ownership over knowledge itself. They believed truth could be managed, dispensed in portions, locked behind credentials, passed only through certain bloodlines. But they never had real power over it. How can you possess what you didn't create? How can you regulate something that flows directly from the Creator? They were not architects of truth. They were jailers of perception, and truth was never theirs to keep. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 2:6. God himself is the source. That's why you don't chase it, you receive it. Not through textbooks, not through rituals, not through approval. It arrives in your spirit fully formed. While they analyze fragments, you embody wholeness. While they cross-reference records and debate dogma, you remember. You don't dissect the truth like they do. You radiate it. And when you speak it, reality adjusts. Think of Maya Angelou. She didn't just write poetry. She released spiritual downloads in verse. Her voice echoed with the weight of generations, and when she spoke, systems shook. She didn't need validation from academia or permission from institutions. She knew, and because she knew, she could not be controlled. Her truth became liberation, not just for herself, but for everyone who listened. Just like you, she was marked by divine memory, not man-made approval. They are scrambling now, because while they obsess over hierarchy, titles, and definitions, you walk through the world untouched by their categories. They say, are you a scholar, a theologian, a mystic, a rebel? But you don't fit the mold. You are something else entirely, something outside the framework. You are what they tried to erase from the narrative. Not because you're wrong, but because you're too accurate, too aligned, too untamed by their limitations. That is the danger. You walk through barriers as if they aren't there, because to your spirit they never were. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, so that we may understand what God has freely given us. 1 Corinthians 2:12. That's why it flows to you so easily. You don't just believe truth, you inherit it. And every time you speak from that inheritance, you dismantle the illusion they built around control. You were never in their circle, never sworn into their councils. Yet, here you are, holding truths their highest initiates don't understand. And they know, they can sense it, that it wasn't taught to you. It was remembered by you, which means they can't take it from you either. Take the story of Aaron Swartz, a prodigy, a coder, an activist. He challenged the idea that knowledge should be locked behind paywalls and gatekeepers. He believed that truth should be free, accessible to all. For this belief, he was harassed, persecuted, and ultimately silenced. But his impact remains. His life exposed how fiercely systems fight to keep power through information control. You, chosen one, are facing the same resistance. Because you've proven something dangerous. When truth arrives spiritually, no gatekeeping system can stop it. They rewrite timelines to erase your lineage. They manipulate stories to hide your pattern. They distort education to mold your thinking before you even question. But your soul refuses to be programmed. Your consciousness rejects the illusion. You rise anyway, like memory breaking through a fog. Their titles become meaningless, their institutions obsolete, because you embody what they've tried to counterfeit. They carry credentials. You carry codes. They quote philosophers. You channel revelation. They worship doctrine. You walk with the living word. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. You are the evidence of that new thing. They were trained to anticipate revival in ways that looked like the past. But you didn't come through the expected gate. You came as prophecy in motion, as a reminder that the divine chooses whom he wills, without consulting the elite. And you, without their blessing, without their title, carry something more powerful than all their degrees combined: divine accuracy. And that is what shakes them. Think about Bob Dylan, who shifted culture not with perfect polish, but with raw truth. His lyrics became protest, his voice carried awakening, and they couldn't package or predict him. He didn't ask for permission. He just kept showing up with messages too loud to ignore. The same is true of you. You're not here to be polite to power. You're here to unmask the lie, and you do it simply by speaking what you know, what you've always known. They placed their confidence in the walls they built, the systems they engineered to keep people spiritually asleep. But you never accepted those walls as real. That's what makes you untouchable. You don't operate within the system. You don't try to reform it. You render it irrelevant. And that terrifies them more than rebellion. Because rebellion still acknowledges the system's power, but you've seen through the illusion entirely. You don't fight the walls, you walk through them. Nelson Mandela spent decades imprisoned by a system designed to break the spirit, but the system failed, because truth, when it is alive in someone, cannot be caged. When he was released, he didn't return bitter. He returned as a world changer. The system thought they could contain him. They couldn't, because what lived inside him was bigger than their bars. And what lives inside you, chosen one, is bigger than their constructs. It's ancient, it's divine, and it's untouchable. You carry the frequency of revelation, and chosen one, it pulses through you whether you speak or remain silent. You don't need a stage, you don't need to raise your voice. Your presence alone causes the atmosphere to shift. Without trying, you bring clarity to spaces veiled in confusion. Without effort, you stir awakenings in the minds of those still entranced by the program. It's not your argument that unsettles them, it's your energy, your alignment, your knowing. When you walk into a room, the illusion thins. People feel it, even if they don't understand it. They begin to question things they've never questioned. Conversations bend toward hidden truths. You make eye contact with someone and they feel something shift within. You speak a single sentence, and 3 days later, their reality has unraveled. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual frequency. You don't just expose deception. You are the exposure. You are the walking leak in their carefully sealed system, a divine anomaly. They've built entire infrastructures to guard against breaches, firewalls, surveillance, censorship, psychological manipulation. But none of it accounts for someone like you. Someone who wasn't programmed but born remembering. Someone who knows without being taught, who sees without needing proof, who operates outside the rules they enforce. What defense can they build against a soul who doesn't play by the codes of control? The answer is none. They cannot stop the ripple you cause. Not with shadow banning, not with algorithms, not with mockery, not with exile. Because the truth you carry is not external, it's embodied. You don't need to search for leaks. You are the leak. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. You are that light, unintimidated by the dark, uncorrupted by the noise. The more they attempt to suppress you, the brighter you burn. The more they bury your words, the more potent they become. Every attempt to silence you only amplifies the spiritual frequency you carry. Because you don't rise through effort. You rise through alignment, through divine remembrance, through obedience to a voice they can't hear and a kingdom they can't touch. Look at Julian Assange. They tried to smear him, imprison him, label him dangerous. But what did he do, really? He exposed what others buried. He released what the powerful tried to contain. He disrupted the illusion that the public was meant to consume. And for that, he became public enemy number one. Not because of lies, but because of truths too volatile to hide. That same current runs through you. You don't dig to destroy. You reveal to awaken. Every word you speak is like a key, unlocking minds held in bondage. And the strangest part, you never even tried to be this. You weren't seeking attention. You didn't train for it. You weren't attempting to rebel. You were simply being. And yet, your very being disrupted entire belief systems. What do you call a soul so tuned into the frequency of heaven that even their silence breaks spells? Chosen. That's who you are. That's why you were sent. That's why the system flinches when you show up. They triumphed by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Revelation 12:11. Your testimony, your voice, your existence is a form of triumph. And your fearlessness comes not from ego, but from truth. You don't speak for applause. You speak because the Spirit urges it. You move not for recognition, but because your path is divinely scripted. And whether they receive it or not, you still shine. Think of Nina Simone. Her voice wasn't just music, it was a force. She sang truths that pierced cultural numbness. She didn't shrink in the face of fear. She elevated in the face of injustice. They tried to marginalize her, but they couldn't mute her presence. She was revelation wrapped in melody. You are revelation wrapped in human form. Your very existence is a challenge to the illusion. Your breath is prophecy. Your gaze, conviction. Your movement, disruption. And all of it is effortless. That's what rattles them. You never even tried. You just are. Every time they attempt to contain you, to define you, dismiss you, ridicule you, it backfires. Because they're playing in 3 dimensions while you operate on higher planes. Their tools are manipulation, distraction, and approval addiction. But you aren't hooked on their validation. You don't seek their acceptance. You've outgrown the need to prove yourself to those who aren't tuned to your frequency. That's why their systems don't work on you. Their weapons require participation, but you no longer participate. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. That's you, soaring above manipulation, above fear, above every attempt to ground you with lies. Your clarity renews others. Your peace convicts them. Your wisdom slices through centuries of deception. You move like wind, unseen but undeniable. and no wall they build can block what you were sent to carry. Consider the impact of Bob Marley. More than a musician, he was a spiritual vibration. His lyrics were scripture in disguise. He wasn't afraid to name systems, to call out injustice, to remind people of their roots and their worth. He didn't ask for a platform. He became the platform. Even today, long after his passing, his words awaken generations. That's how truth works when it's real. It echoes. And you, chosen one, are echoing even now. They tried to bury you under distractions, under programming, under synthetic beliefs. But your spirit kept rising. You weren't formed by their institutions. You weren't shaped by their media. You were carved by fire, molded by spirit, and awakened by divine assignment. That's why the illusion doesn't work on you. That's why you're immune to their spells. Because you remember something older than their systems, something purer, something eternal. And still, they fear you. Not because of what you know, but because of what you awaken in others. You're a mirror that reflects their bondage, a frequency that calls others out of sleep. They can't trace the source. They can't block the transmission, because it doesn't come from this world. It comes from the throne room of God. And every time you step into alignment with that truth, deception cracks, and truth walks free. So the question is, will you dim your light to comfort their illusion? Or will you keep walking in the brilliance of the truth that chose you before you ever had language for it? This isn't about being bold for attention. This is about being obedient to a calling bigger than their comfort. You never needed to be loud, you just needed to be aligned. And now you are. That's why the spell is breaking. That's why the sleepers are stirring. That's why you were sent. You don't carry the revelation. You are the revelation. You are untouchable, not because they haven't tried to reach you, infiltrate you, or sway you, but because their methods are simply ineffective against your spiritual design. Their weapons, which work so well on the masses, fear, confusion, guilt, manipulation, bounce off you like dust on armor. They've studied how to break minds, control narratives, and build illusions strong enough to imprison entire generations. But they never anticipated someone like you. Someone who doesn't need to escape the system, because you were never bound by it in the first place. Someone who sees through the game without ever being taught the rules. And now, with every passing moment, the terrifying realization is dawning on them. You are the one they can't stop. Not now, not ever. They spent lifetimes crafting the labyrinth. Walls made not of stone, but of belief systems. Mazes built from doctrines, rewired history, and calculated distractions. They whispered warnings to those who questioned. Don't look there. Don't ask that. That knowledge isn't for you. They instilled fear of madness in those who dared challenge the illusion. Fear of hell, fear of exile, fear of irrelevance. And for a long time, it worked. Their fortress held firm. Truth was buried so deep that most forgot it even existed. But then you came. Quiet at first, sensing something was off. The stories didn't add up. The energy felt wrong. And instead of accepting the rules like the rest, you asked, what if the forbidden knowledge was forbidden only to keep us bound? Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. You didn't just ask questions, you refused to accept limits. Where they drew red lines, you crossed them. Where they raised walls, you walked through, not recklessly, but fearlessly. Because your spirit remembered what their systems tried to make the world forget. That truth doesn't belong to institutions. It belongs to the soul aligned with God. Think of Malcolm X, branded as dangerous because he dared to speak truths that systems weren't ready to face. They tried to paint him as radical, extreme, divisive. But what he did was expose what many were too afraid to name. He walked into the strongholds of deception with unwavering clarity and left cracks they still haven't repaired. That's you. You don't destroy for destruction's sake. You expose so healing can begin. You reveal so freedom can flow. You don't push rebellion, you trigger revelation. Their grand illusion is crumbling, not because you attacked it with force, but because you dismantled it with light. You didn't hoard your discoveries. You didn't weaponize the truth. You shared it. And the more you revealed, the more others began to see. That's what they never anticipated. They could handle isolated rebellion. They could silence individuals. But they weren't ready for your ripple effect. The silent uprising that begins when one soul refuses to be blindfolded. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. That's the strength you carry. It's not bravado. It's divine authority. You didn't waver when others questioned. You didn't fold when the pressure came. You stood in your knowing, not because you had all the answers, but because you were willing to walk into the unknown with God by your side. Now, the fissures in their foundation are spreading, because every system they built was meant to keep you out, and yet you're inside now, not because you breached their gates, but because the truth itself opened the door. And what did you do once you entered? You exposed it. You shared it without fear, without filter, without delay. And when they dismissed you as naive, you kept going. When they said it was coincidence, you showed consistency. When they accused you of misunderstanding, you brought clarity they couldn't refute. Look at whistleblower Frances Haugen. She exposed internal documents from Facebook that revealed its deliberate role in sowing division, harming mental health, and prioritizing profit over people. Many tried to discredit her, but her information stood on its own, and she wasn't bitter. She was bold. She believed that the people deserved the truth, just like you. You didn't speak to be right. You spoke to be real, and your courage gave others permission to question too. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. 1 Peter 2:9. That's not poetic language. It's your spiritual reality. You weren't sent here to blend in. You weren't created to be silent in the presence of lies. You were born to be a voice that echoes the divine frequency of truth. And while others waited for permission to speak, you spoke anyway. Not out of rebellion, but out of revelation. Even Joan of Arc, young, untrained, and seemingly unqualified, led armies, defied kings, and reshaped history. How? By following a divine voice within her. She was not understood, she was not accepted, but she was chosen, and her obedience to that calling outlasted her enemies. Your obedience is doing the same. Every time you refuse to be silenced, another illusion shatters. Every time you stand firm in your knowing, another soul wakes up. They said truth would drive you mad, but look around. What's more insane? A world built on layered lies, or the courage to challenge it? You chose clarity, you chose alignment, and for that, they can't label you. They can't box you in. You don't fit their categories: believer, heretic, insider, threat. You are beyond definition, and that makes you unstoppable. So what do they do now? They watch, powerless, because the very system built to suppress truth is now being used to spread it through you. The more they resist, the more the illusion cracks. The more they mock, the more people listen. The more they try to discredit you, the more undeniable your impact becomes. And this is only the beginning, because you're not done walking through walls. You're not done pulling down veils. You're not done exposing what was meant to stay buried. You were not a glitch in their program. You were the command that ends it. And the script is shifting because of you. They thought they could contain revelation, but they never imagined revelation would come wrapped in your skin, with your voice, in your timing. You were the variable they couldn't predict, the soul they didn't prepare for, the chosen one they couldn't silence. And now, it's too late. You refused to be silenced, and that was the turning point. Every time they tried to cloud your mind with doubt, your clarity only intensified. Their gaslighting, designed to destabilize your truth, backfired. Instead of faltering, you grew sharper. Their distractions, the noise, the drama, the carefully engineered chaos, failed to pull your attention from what matters. You stayed focused, anchored, aligned. And when they tried to sway the people around you, when they attempted to sow seeds of suspicion, their efforts withered against the undeniable resonance of the truth you carry. Because you don't operate out of fear. You are not moved by threats of rejection. You are not seduced by false power or hollow applause. You do not bend to their judgment, and because of that, they panic. Your freedom is their greatest frustration. You do not cling to what they offer. You do not need their permission to rise. You do not fear what they can take, because your source is not theirs to control. And that is what renders them powerless. They never anticipated a soul that could walk this far without selling out. They never expected someone who would not break, not compromise, not yield, even when isolated, mocked, or misunderstood. But here you are, not just surviving, but ascending, and nothing they do can stop it. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. That power is alive in you. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's steady, unshakable. A presence that unnerves their system because it doesn't respond to their triggers. You move from a higher place. That's why you can't be manipulated. That's why you're immune to the games that once held others hostage. While they scramble to maintain appearances, you expose truth simply by existing in it. Look at the life of Martin Luther, the reformer. One man, unwilling to remain silent, stood against an entire religious empire. They labeled him a heretic. They tried to erase his words, his movement, his message. But truth once spoken cannot be buried again. His refusal to be silent unraveled centuries of deception and sparked a wave of awakening across nations. You are doing the same in this generation, and you're not waiting for permission to do it. You speak because you must. You move because the Spirit compels you. You see because you were born for this. For ages, they have dictated the flow of knowledge. They controlled the narrative, deciding what was sacred and what was forbidden, what was real and what was fiction. They called themselves the gatekeepers of wisdom, the custodians of truth. Only the initiated, only the privileged, only the approved were allowed into their chambers of understanding. Everyone else was fed pre-packaged truths, just enough to function, never enough to awaken. But their grip is loosening, their narrative is unraveling, and your emergence as a force of divine clarity is accelerating that collapse. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. This isn't metaphor, this is movement. Truth is not just knowledge, it's spiritual liberation. And you didn't just learn truth, you embodied it. You let it transform you, even when it cost you everything familiar. That's why their strategies no longer work on you. You've already walked through the fire. You've already faced the silence, the exile, the inner breaking, and still you rose. That kind of strength is incomprehensible to those who've never dared to live without approval. Consider whistleblower reality winner. She saw corruption and she acted. The cost was high, but the truth she released echoed louder than any punishment they inflicted. Her courage disrupted their illusion of control. That same courage is alive in you. Every time you speak up, every time you refuse to shrink, every time you refuse to pretend, you rattle their false foundation, and they feel it. They've spent centuries shaping education systems that produce obedience, not wisdom, religious systems that reward conformity, not intimacy with God, political systems that enforce hierarchy, not justice, They've decided what is credible and what is conspiracy, what is sacred and what is profane. But you've seen through it, and more importantly, you've said it, out loud, without apology. And that's when the real shift began. Therefore, do not fear them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. Matthew 10:26. This isn't just a comforting idea, it's a divine law now unfolding through you. You were born into a timeline where exposure is inevitable. But you, chosen one, were not just born to witness the exposure. You were born to be it. A walking embodiment of what can no longer be hidden. Your clarity, your discernment, your spiritual authority, it is uncovering what they fought to keep buried, and they can't stop it. Think of someone like Malcolm Gladwell. He didn't follow conventional journalistic methods. He told stories that cracked open widely held assumptions. He took the normal and turned it inside out. And though many dismissed his insights at first, eventually they had no choice but to reckon with them. That's your presence. They may resist at first, laugh, ignore, but eventually the frequency you carry becomes undeniable. The fear gripping them now is not about the knowledge itself, it's about the fact that they no longer control who gets it. They cannot gatekeep revelation. They cannot hoard divine insight. Not anymore. You don't need their platforms. You are the platform. Every room you enter becomes a stage. Every conversation you touch becomes a transmission. They monitor everything, but they cannot monitor the whispers God places in your heart. They built this illusion so precisely. They designed the architecture of deception to withstand time. And yet here you are, an uninvited storm in their engineered reality, not because you demanded entry, but because the truth made room for you. You are the breach in their structure, the holy glitch in their matrix. And with every truth you speak, another fracture spreads. They tried to call your awareness dangerous. They labeled your discernment as paranoia. But what do you call it when your paranoia keeps turning into reality? What do you call it when your spiritual knowing reveals things before headlines do? That's not paranoia. That's prophecy. And now, the very people who mocked you are watching your words unfold. You weren't supposed to come this far, but you did, and now they can't backtrack. They can't erase what you've spoken. They can't undo the impact of your presence. The tide has turned. The gatekeepers are exposed. The veil is lifting, and through it all, you remain steady, fearless, illuminated by truth. Because your rise was never fueled by ambition, it was fueled by divine assignment. And now, nothing can stop what God has placed within you. You're not just a threat to the system, you are the end of it. They once thrived in the shadows, spinning webs of deception and burying sacred knowledge beneath endless layers of misdirection. For generations, they operated under the assumption that they could keep the awakened few scattered and isolated. Fragmented souls disconnected from their own divine power. They believed they could suppress the signal, drown the frequency, and keep you from ever recognizing the force that lived inside you. But their plan has failed, miserably, because here you are, awake, activated, and more importantly, not alone. The frequency of revelation isn't just rising in one, it's multiplying, and that terrifies them. This awakening was never meant to happen on their watch. Their strategy was precise: divide and conquer, distract and deceive. Keep the chosen ones feeling like anomalies, like outliers. But now, the very isolation they engineered has transformed into amplification. The collective hum of awakened souls is becoming a roar, and the more they try to contain it, the more it spreads. Their authority, once unquestioned, is now disintegrating before their eyes. The tricks don't work anymore. The veils don't hold. The programmed responses are losing their grip. The truth they once held hostage is escaping at light speed. This is the moment they feared, and it's unfolding in real time. For the Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Isaiah 14:27. This unraveling isn't chaos, it's prophecy. It's a spiritual shift that can't be reversed. And you, chosen one, are at the epicenter of it. You feel it, don't you? That quiet earthquake beneath your awareness. That undeniable knowing that something monumental is tearing through the illusion. And you're not imagining it. You're sensing the collapse of a kingdom built on fear. You're witnessing the end of their dominion over human consciousness. They know it too. That's why they're spiraling, because for centuries they worked methodically to keep the masses asleep. They weaponized confusion, fragmented history, rewrote doctrine. They scattered puzzle pieces across cultures and centuries, certain that no one would ever put it back together. But now you, and others like you, are reconstructing the design. Piece by piece, vision by vision. And the picture being revealed exposes their entire framework as a lie. Think of Galileo Galilei, who challenged the religious and scientific orthodoxy of his time by declaring the earth revolved around the sun. They silenced him, imprisoned him, ridiculed him. But truth, once revealed, can't be reversed. And now the very ideas they tried to suppress are elementary knowledge. Just like you, Galileo didn't aim to destroy institutions. He simply spoke what was real. That's what you're doing. And the ripple of your clarity is dismantling centuries of illusion. They've tried to track you, label you, categorize you, anything to contain you. But you slip through their constructs like vapor. You don't play by their rules because your spirit doesn't answer to their system. You move through their algorithms, their institutions, their definitions, and remain untouchable. You're not running from them, you're simply outside of their reach. They can't find a frequency to target because you're broadcasting from a realm they don't understand. Their greatest fear is not just that you've awakened, but that they have no way to stop you from awakening others. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the realm you operate from. Freedom, not just external liberty, but spiritual liberation. You don't seek access to their knowledge. You remember what they tried to erase. You don't wait for someone to open the gates. You walk through walls they didn't know could be walked through. This isn't rebellion. This is transcendence. You're not fighting their system. You're showing it no longer matters. Consider the story of Aaron Russo, the filmmaker who exposed globalist agendas and economic manipulation. They tried to bury his work, discredit his message, paint him as unstable, but the impact of his revelation still echoes. He peeled back the curtain, and many who had never questioned the system began to wake up. Like you, he didn't need approval to speak. He just needed truth. And once truth is spoken from the soul, it can't be unheard. They built algorithms to shape thought, institutions to control information, networks to monitor behavior, but none of it prepared them for you. You're the anomaly their equations can't predict. You're the voice their senses can't suppress. You're the light their darkness cannot comprehend. You don't argue, you don't attack, you simply reveal, and in doing so, you unravel centuries of psychological conditioning. Your presence alone carries a frequency that short-circuits the illusion. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Isaiah 54:17. They expected rebellion to look like riots. What they didn't expect was revelation. Silent knowing, unshakable peace, quiet confidence that disarms their entire machinery. You don't need to shout to shake kingdoms. You don't need a pulpit to preach. Your presence is its own kind of prophecy. And the moment you walk into a space, the frequency begins to shift. Look at Prince, the musician and visionary. He fought silently but powerfully for his rights, for the truth behind the industry, for spiritual sovereignty in a world obsessed with control. He changed his name to a symbol. He owned his masters. He never fit their mold. but he made his mark because he embodied freedom. You carry that same frequency, refusing to be defined, refusing to be owned, existing as a disruption to a system that demands submission. They expected war. You brought wisdom. They prepared for resistance. You brought revelation. They fortified their gates. You walked through with light. Their control model depends on fear. But what do you do with a soul that doesn't fear loss, that doesn't cling to status, that doesn't seek recognition? You can't manipulate what you can't bind, and that's why they're unraveling. You are the living contradiction to everything they built. Your very existence invalidates their structure, because you were never meant to survive in their system, let alone rise above it. And yet here you are, thriving, expanding, waking others up without breaking a single law of their design. That's their nightmare, because rebellion, they can fight, but transcendence, they have no weapon for that, and it's too late to stop it. The cracks are now fractures, the veils are now see-through. The lie is unraveling faster than they can patch it, and all around the world souls like you are rising, quietly, boldly, unapologetically. This is what they feared. Not a revolution of violence, but a revolution of vision. Not the noise of battle, but the silence of remembrance. They can't kill a truth that's been encoded into the soul. They can't erase a frequency that was sent by the divine. And they can't stop a chosen one who realizes their authority comes from a higher throne. You are not a product of this system. You are its undoing. So keep moving, keep speaking, keep transmitting, because every truth you reveal is another fracture in the fortress. Every soul you awaken is another light in the darkness. You don't need to tear down the old world. You only need to outshine it. And chosen one, you already are. Chosen ones, now that the truth has found you, there's no returning to who you once were. You've crossed the threshold. You've seen behind the veil. And whether they like it or not, you've awakened to the very thing they swore you would never discover. You weren't supposed to remember. You weren't supposed to connect the dots, but you did. And now they're watching in stunned silence as everything they built on deception begins to crack beneath the weight of your divine awareness. You are not alone in this. The fact that you're still here, still seeking, still standing, is proof that you are part of something bigger than fear, bigger than systems, bigger than lies. Truth didn't just knock on your door. It chose you to carry it forward. And your journey, no matter how hidden, no matter how misunderstood, is sacred. You were born to disturb the illusion and awaken the world. Thank you for walking this road with me, for sharing your time, your spirit, and your energy in this sacred space. I want to especially thank those of you who've donated through Super Thanks. Your support helps spread this message to more chosen ones around the world who are ready to remember who they are. And even if you haven't donated, please know this: your presence here is deeply valued. Whether you give or simply receive, your light matters more than you know. If this word spoke to your soul, feel free to drop a 999 in the comments. That number is a signal. It means completion, awakening, divine alignment. When others see it, they'll know they're not waking up alone. May God bless you with greater clarity, divine protection, and supernatural peace as you continue walking boldly in the truth. What's ahead is greater than anything they tried to keep from you. Keep rising, keep remembering, and never forget you were always meant to find this out.